Another question that comes to my attention quite often is from our younger subscribers, and that is they're reaching out and asking question, should I or should I not go to college? Several of them face a lot of peer pressure, parental pressure to follow in their footsteps, so on and so forth. And that question just came back to us a couple of days ago, and I had a few minutes, so I thought I'd address it. So this segment of Ask Me Anything, I'm going to address the question that I'm asked quite often, should I or should I not go to college? First of all, I think the question is being asked to me so many times because of, I guess, how my life has worked out. And old Barry figured out at 21 I'm totally untrainable, and I just couldn't work for anybody else. I had to make my own decisions and work for myself. And when I make that statement, I'm not coming across, or at least I hope I don't appear to be coming across that one is right and one is wrong. Personalities are different, people are different, and for many people the exact opposite would hold true. They would much rather be in an environment where a lot of decisions are passed down to them, and it's their responsibility to carry them out to the best of their ability and make sure that the end result is as positive as possible. I just, from the folks that know me, they know I'm just not that type of personality. So I think the question comes to me because of being in so many countries, traveling and having so many different careers, from marine business to being an underwater photographer to a property developer. My gosh, so many different things have come my way. If you hear one of my roosters in the background, like I say, you'll have to forgive it. But so I'm going to address that question to the best of my ability. Should I or should I not go to college? In my day, it was almost imperative that you had a college education if you wanted any type of professional or semi-professional career. And perhaps, which is even much more important, is the demand was there for the graduates to fill these vacant positions in a growing economy. Today's environment, it's sort of like a paradigm shift, and I'll explain what I mean. Today's environment, most college graduates are not finding employment in the field of their choice, settling for the jobs of mediocrity in terms of service industry, waiter, waitress, things of this nature, even though they're holding that degree. So there's been a paradigm shift. And I'm a big believer that markets always rule the world, and supply and demand is a big part of any market. So the supply at the current time has shifted from my time, where supply is well exceeding demand. And one example I could give you about that would be, let's take law. In the U.S. alone, there's more than 40,000 law graduates a year. So the question becomes, where do you place them all? And as the economies have weakened and, in my humble opinion, have only begun to really start to show the direction they're headed over the next decade, where do you fit in? 40,000 plus lawyers a year. So you find that the ones that do tend to find a career in starting as a lawyer, you find they're working tremendous hours for minimal pay. So, like I say, in my day, the doors were open. You can slip your foot into them. And nowadays, most doors are shut to begin with. You can't even place your foot in them. So that's something I would consider, unless it's some highly specialized field in technology or perhaps medicine, and I mean specialized, I would consider, if I was younger, if I was, at that age this time versus my generation, I would highly consider whether it's worth going into debt for that education, unless it's highly specialized. Continuing on, another point I would like to bring to your attention would also be college debt. And currently right now, and I'll use America again as an example, currently now the unfunded liability is exceeding $1 trillion with a T. And as of now, that's an unforgivable debt. So that may follow you for the rest of your life if it doesn't pan out to your liking on your education. The thing about that is most people, I believe on an average, are leaving college between $50,000 and $60,000, but many are exceeding triple-digit debts. So that's something you may want to consider in this environment. Another thing that most folks aren't going to tell you, but being on the trend-savvy kind of individual, is nowadays college seems to be more like an indoctrination than an education. I'll leave that up to you to do your own research. I don't want to dwell on that, but I do want to mention it. And if people are asking me about should I or should I not, again, it's an individual decision, but what's wrong with looking at colleges in foreign countries if your mind is set on college, where the tuitions can be sometimes 15, 18% of what you would pay back in the States, and every bit as good as of an education, perhaps sometimes even better. What's wrong with young people still doing what I used to do, and that is travel, gain experience? Do you really even know what you want to do at 18 to 20 years of age, or do you have a fallacy? How can you really know if you're that young and you haven't traveled, you haven't experienced different things in different countries? Again, it's another, I guess, indirectly a way of climbing the staircase, trying to see different views the higher the staircase you go. So, really, what would be wrong with that? In terms of traveling a little bit, you can do it very economically. You can learn, you can pick up a second language. Doors can open that may not in your home country. Another thing about that I would like to suggest is it builds experience. And when people talk about surviving, it's never the strongest or the most intelligent of any species that survives. It's the most adaptable to change. So I would consider that in today's environment and what's right around the corner. And something hardly anybody ever talks about, and old Barry's done this most of my life, was I didn't look for a job, I created one for me. And I know that's well out of the box for most people. Certainly would be if they're trying to, if they're listening to their parents' advice. But I've always created my own jobs. By traveling the world, I saw what was needed in certain areas. One example that quickly comes to mind, I won't dwell on it, but it is an example that's worth mentioning. I used to live in a subtropical environment, and at that point in my life, I was very young, moved to a northern environment only to start a boat business, where my father was about the most open-minded man I had ever met in my life. And even he had trouble accepting that one because the water was frozen 9 months a year. But by living there, I did my research, and I happened to find out that there were more powerboats and ski boats there per capita than in any other place in Canada, including Vancouver. And I opened up a marine business there with, I think back then it was around 4,000 or 5,000 Canadian dollars, and old 1952 Yale forklift. I'm sorry, but I'm dating myself on that one. And In under 15 years, it grew up to be the second largest marine service facility, factory authorized in all of Western Canada, out of $4,000. And I'm not encouraging you to live your life my way or gamble. I'm just saying being open-minded. I've always never accepted positions because of money. Or trading time for money. I've learned at a younger age how to leverage time for money. I would suggest that in itself should be a college course, but it's not even being offered. And every time I built up business, whether it was real estate or whether it was the boat business or anything like that, when I took it to what I felt was the top of my ability and it couldn't grow anymore, I always had a tendency of giving it away for what it was worth for the stock, or I didn't wait for a high price, or our real estate business, which we did in the States as well. And we did that all via computer, and we used to sell over 230 homes a year because I understood the market. Even that we gave to our secretary. If I remember right, she actually fainted, but that's a different story. When the broker came in and said, no, he's real. You just need my signature and yours. And I never believed on hanging on to anything for sheer money. I guess my personality is I'm a builder, and I like to start with minimal and survive and build up from there. And I'm not saying that's right for you. I'm only trying to get across the amount of options, because in today's environment, in spite of what you're being told, old Barry thinks there's more options than almost ever before. And there is that small percentage that's always going to capitalize in an environment like this, because they're out-of-the-box thinkers that are flexible. Their mind, their plan is flexible. And I would encourage you to be one of those. So it was... in closing, it was my desire that these thoughts get you to think a little bit more in depth before you rush into a decision, because as you're young, time is still on your side, and in spite of what the media tries to tell you and your friends. Closing note, it's really funny because some almost 40 years later, I'm still in touch with a few friends from back up north, and a great example of a closed mind that I still, after 40 years, they'll still be arguing with me that I can't live this way, even though since early 40s I have been. And it's gotten to the point where I decided, do I want to be right or do I want to be happy? And I started to change the conversation and agree with them, and it would go something like this, so I've been telling you can't do it. And, my friend Alan or something back home. And it got to the point years ago, I'd say, Alan, you're so right. Big mistake. I don't know what I was thinking. And if I had enough money, I'd come back to Alberta right now. And, boy, you were right, Alan. And then he goes, yeah, the conversation shifts, and it's like, Barry, I always meant it for the best of you, and look at me, I only got another 22 years to go, and I'm going to get a pension. Or at least he does think he's going to get a pension, but that's a different video. But the point is, to me, Alan sounds more like he's describing a jail sentence than living a life. And I just want to talk about other subjects, not right or wrong, regardless of how it worked out for me. And it was just easier to agree with him. I decided I would rather be happy than be right, because you're just, it's very difficult to win an argument or a discussion with an intelligent man, but it's downright impossible with an ignorant one. But it doesn't mean he's not a good friend of mine. In that subject, he's just closed-minded. So I hope this gave you guys some other things to consider. You can always even start a college education in another country and finish it in the States and still save a pile of money because the credits are transferable. Another thing in closing is one last statement, and that's going to go with almost anything of the hundreds or thousands of people old Barry meets. And that is, everything you want is just on the other side of fear. So until next time, keep those questions coming in, and I'll do my best. I'm just sitting here in my little old office here outside my house, killing a few minutes with you guys and enjoying it very much. Keep the questions coming. I'll do my best to answer them. And until next time, we'll talk to you soon. Bye.